YouTube, Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. It is Friday. This is Friday Night Live. I'm so hyped to be here, man. We got your favorite comic book YouTuber's favorite comic book YouTuber in the house, Swaggle Haas, man. It seems like it's been forever since I've done like an official live stream, especially even having a guest on. So we're just going to take a couple minutes to say what's up to GT, movie fan, Dart Lopez hanging out, Nut Tech, and my number one fan, my main squeeze, Chad. Love you, Chad. All right, man. Jeff, what's going on, Jeff? Guys, it's not clickbait. It's not clickbait. We're going to talk about what is going on in the comic book industry that I feel like nobody wants to talk about, at least, to the degree to where I feel that I'm ready to ask the hard questions that YouTubers, dealers, sellers, sellers, and especially collectors don't want to address or maybe don't want to admit to. Why? Because we all know that there is money in comics and everyone wants to believe that that money is secure. But we're going to get into it. Guys, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. We just hit 14,000 subscribers today, and I just want to take a minute to share my gratitude to everyone. We all know it's been a crazy year. I abandoned the channel going through everything I was going through, and I didn't know if I was coming back, and I decided to come back, and I'm happy that I did. And even fighting the algorithms, man, we made it to 14,000, so I truly appreciate each and every one of you that have stuck with me. A lot to go. It's a journey, man. Pedro, what's going on, Pedro? Gary, what's up? Gary, thank you guys so much for being here. No real big updates. Again, it's still comic book canon, guys, every Sunday. I know I haven't been on there with them, but please, the link is below. Support comic book canon. Also, they have been nominated for the Comic Book Community Awards for one of the, I think it's best channel for 1,000 to 5,000 subs. Please go check that out. cbcawards.org, I believe. And, vote for Comic Book Canon. I'm on there too for a couple of channels. Share some love. You can vote for me as well. I know I'm there for the spec one, but that's going to be a battle because me and Swag are going up against each other on that one. I haven't even been really talking about spec that much anymore. So to be nominated for that, it's very interesting, but I'm not going to be mad if you guys vote for me still. Rex, what's going on? Jeff. So guys, again, we have a lot to talk about tonight. We're probably going to be here for about 90 minutes. This is stuff that I really want to flesh out. A lot of stuff that's been on my mind ever since I've been back, diving back into comics. There was a point where I said, I don't even want to talk about comics anymore, but it lives and exists in me, guys. And so I start diving back into it, start diving back into the market, start diving back into watching YouTubers. And all of these things were things that I've been taking notes on over the last probably 3-4 months. And I finally got enough information and data to say, okay, I want to do a live stream on this. And there was one person that I had in mind that I knew that I wanted to do the show with. One person that I trusted that would be honest with me, and that I respect greatly. I mean, he truly is my favorite comic book YouTuber. So let's just bring in Mickey, aka Swag.
What up? I'm here to tell the truth.
Yes.
And only the truth.
That's right.
What's going on, Chris? Thanks for having me on the channel. It's good to be here. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Apologize for the current background setup. I'm on the road, but hey, we're gonna have a great conversation tonight, and it's really great to get to share the screen with you once again.
Absolutely, man. It's been way too long. I loved our stream that we did when we were talking about the 9.8s don't mean anything, and I showed off my 9.8 with like 8 color breaking spine ticks from CGC. So
yeah.
That was good stuff.
Oh, those were the days when the problems with CGC were really not that big a deal compared to what they are today. Simpler times.
Yep, absolutely. Flicks, Flicks the Comics. What's going on? JoJo, we got Phil. 9.9 newsstand. Thank you guys so much for being here. There was another live stream that we thought we were going to have some conflict with, but some drama live stream. We won't even get into that, but I'm glad that's cleared up. So we're going to have a show. Good solid amount of people in here right now. So guys, we're going to just get into it. I have a little chapter list. I want you guys to see. We're going to bring this in here just to let you guys know what we're going to be going over tonight. Again, we'll try to keep this stream at about 90 minutes here. So this is what we're looking at today, guys. Now, I know, it's not clickbait, but of course, the titles are drilled into the emotion. It's like, like the comic book hobby is imploding or it's going to, combust from the inside out. I mean, this is something that I feel could be an outcome with everything that's going on. It's not that I'm trying to pull you guys in or that I even believe that or don't believe it. In this idea of the truth, I do feel that these are topics that a lot of people would stray away from. So looking at the outline today, chapter 1, we got the fair market value lie, economic factors and big industry collusion. Swag, you talked about that on your channel. I got a couple of quotes from that stream that we're going to go over tonight as well. 2, the backward state of the LCS. And I think this is very important because LCSs are important. We all know that. Chapter 3, what is and what isn't inflation and what it means for comic books. There's this, to me, a very fallacious idea and perception of inflation right now. And it's not just for comic books, but it's for the economy as a whole. But we're going to talk about how it affects comic books in the perception of value of comics in the current market. Chapter 4, FOMO and a down market. Is this 90s on steroids? And I've been the one, Swag. I've been the one saying, everyone that's like, it's the 90s all over again. I'm like, calm down. But I don't know, man. We'll
I need some of those X-Men 97 packs. If anyone in the chat's got one, I need one of those.
Yeah, we'll bring that up for sure. Chapter 5, social media influencers are keeping the hobby alive. Yes. Ooh. Yes, it's going to be a good one.
Okay, all right.
And then lastly, will the hobby implode? I mean, we're talking about a lot of things, and is it doom and gloom for all of us? Beyond Wednesday.
Shout out to Brian.
Yes. So, okay, Swag, are you ready for it, man?
I'm ready. Okay. So, ready to tell the truth.
Right. Now, so we're going to go into a little bit about fair market values here. The fair market value lie. Now, economic factors and big industry collusion. So I'm going to pull up my notes here, Swag, and I'm going to read a little bit. And then, of course, I want your humble opinion. Now, I believe that right now, fair market value. Well, first, let me state this. Fair market value for any consumer item is all based on perception, in a sense. Rolling averages, what people perceive to be something. Many markets, too, especially secondary markets, I personally believe that fair market value should be based on averages and trends. Can you briefly speak to that?
Well, first, we have to say, we're talking about comic books.
Yes.
Right? We're talking about collectibles. Now, I'm not a financial expert. I'm just a dude shooting from the hip. But at the same time, when we talk about fair market value, I mean, how can you really quantify what essentially is pop culture nostalgia with like kind of a true value? You can't really. So the only thing you can kind of determine is what is the current price of things that are selling? And is that really even fair to begin with? I don't know. So there's a lot of places that we talk about, with people who buy comic books and dealers that sell it and, what's the fair market value? And here are the averages and here are the prices and things like that. At the end of the day, comic books is all speculation.
Right.
And so, I see the FMV being the lie, economic factors, big industry. I mean, it is and it isn't. You know, it's a big lie. It's not a big lie. It's all kind of this hot potato game that people are buying and selling comic books, and we use the tools that we can to sort of best navigate the hobby as much as we can. But at the end of the day, it's all a little bit fugazi.
Right.
So I don't know. That's kind of my little setup intro. I don't know if that's kind of where you were taking it.
Yeah, it is. And I think we need to, as collectors, go into that, understanding that, because one way or the other, you know, there is no exact science to this. Yeah. The one thing that I do want to point out, though, is like, and I've done this, if you guys have watched any of my investment or speculation videos where I'm looking at values on the market, you know, I always say, don't just look at the last sale. Don't just look, and especially outliers. I mean, I don't even look at outliers for the most part. Look at what it's been doing. Look at what it's been trending. I mean, comic books don't sell like loaves of bread, you know, especially if it's an older book, bronze, especially silver. You know, you might have one sale every other week or something like that. And you can go back the last 3 months and you could base your decision on how you're going to spend your money, what a good value is for you based on looking, oh, well, there's 6 sales over the last couple of months. Let me do a little average and figure that out. There's no lie in that. That's a solid way of just looking at what a book is doing on the market and what you're willing to pay. And as long as you're comfortable, that's fine. But we do have to understand that the way that we consume comic books post COVID or since COVID has changed a lot. Now, of course, the e-commerce market has been here for 25 years plus, but it's really been taken to a next level over the last 4 years since COVID. We have the basically the, I don't want to say the invention, but I mean the live stream being where it's at for comic books. We have eBay, where it's another kind of emotion grabber where you're sitting and bidding and you're sitting down at the 59, 58, you know, you're sitting there. That what's that called, Swag, where you
countdown?
Yeah, where you're counting down. It's like a bid bombing or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so we're really driving our emotions here in these new online venues of how we buy books. And there's a convenience factor because we're not getting up, getting dressed, going to the LCS. You know, we're sitting behind our computers, sitting behind our phones and bidding things up. And those are what we look at. Any online Go Collect, GPA, outside of auction houses, Go Collect, GPA, Cover Price, which I love using Cover Prices, eBay Sold. These are all online marketplaces. Nobody is taking LCS prices or flea market prices or even con prices and putting them into these fair market value algorithms or averages or anything like that. So we are basing our fair market values on strictly online marketplaces and auction houses.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a little bit too about how, being that these are the databases that we use to base fair market value, let's talk a little bit briefly about the big industry collusion. Now, you brought this up with is his name Sean with Reserve Investments?
Yeah, Sean from Reserve Investments. Yeah.
Great interview, guys. If you haven't watched that on Swag's channel, go check it out. But he brought up some things where he was saying, I have a couple quotes from him about talking about shill bidding. He said, shill bidding is not illegal if it's disclosed in an auction contract. You could be bidding right against the auction house. So I want you to speak on this a little bit too, Swag, because if we're looking at Cover Price or GPA or Go Collect and all these databases to say, oh, well, I'm looking at, you know, getting a Hulk 181. I want a graded copy, 8.0 or higher. And you're looking at some sales that are coming from these auction houses. And there is a lot of, and again, I like what he said, because he was like, look, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of leeway or a lot of holes that it does look like. I mean, you got to scratch your head with what's going on. How much do you think us is standard collectors, and not, you know, we're not the big timers spending 1.3 or $3.2 million on, a Superman #1 in an auction house or anything like that, but even like anywhere from a few $1,000s to like $100,000. How do you feel that using these online databases that are taking sales from these auction houses, do you think that this is kind of getting distorted in terms of what we're seeing for fair market value?
Well, yeah, probably it is. And let me backtrack a little bit on like some of the stuff that you were saying and kind of ask you, with the framing of this, the FMV being the lie. Do you feel like it's been kind of this lie because it's sort of a dog sort of chasing its tail, where there's a sale that happens online.
Yep.
And so we look at it, and then so we all say, oh, I guess if it's sold for that, then therefore it equals this,
Yep.
and that's kind of how we've all, operated. And it sort of makes you wonder, like, okay, well, who actually bought this book? Like, we're all putting a lot of faith into this one sale, into this one number, and we're all assuming that that's what the actual fair market value is.
Right.
But at the same time, that's just the one sale that happened for that one book. I mean, shout out to Sean of Reserved Investments. He'll always will make this point, and this is why I like watching his channels. He'll articulate these types of things where, just because you have a book that is like the book that sold, and that book got that number, does not mean that your book is now worth that number.
Yep.
That's what that person got for that book.
Yep.
You might get the same price, but you may not. And that's kind of the world we live in. I mean, that's what comic books and collectibles is. It's like there's this largely opaque nature of collecting. And I think in the grander scheme of the line that's being told here, or kind of like how you sort of frame the setup here, is like, I think what you're kind of implying, what I'm getting, is there's a lot of people that sort of blindly talk about this stuff as like, oh, well, it's worth this, it's worth this. And they're kind of being a little too maybe casual with that term of it's worth that. And it's like, is it really though? Is it really? Anyways, I say all that to say this, which is to address the point you were saying. Yeah, it is kind of it is and it isn't, right? Where these online sales, in a lot of ways, can be manipulated or they can be real. And we don't actually know, but we do put a lot of faith into what we're seeing. And as far as like the auction houses are concerned, yeah, Sean brought it up in our discussion that there's probably a lot of shill bidding that goes on. Now, again, it's not necessarily like, it doesn't have to be, a cabal or some grand conspiracy. Like literally the auction houses are bidding on items. I mean, who knows? But it doesn't have to be that. It can just be that people can utilize these tools and the proprietary knowledge and collectibles and stuff for their benefit. And one of the examples I talked about with like shill bidding when I was having a discussion with Sean is, and I've heard this be an actual thing out there, is like, imagine there's an auction. It's an eBay. You have your, not Journo's Comics eBay account, and yeah, there happens to be a whatever, Darkhawk #1 book, and you happen to have like 1,000 copies in your inventory, and you shill bid it up to like have it sell for $1,000 in a 9.8, and it turns out that you won't ever end up paying for that book, or your burner account won't do whatever. But you have your Whatnot show the next day, and you say, "Wow, man, did you guys see that this $1,000 sale happened? Hey, I have this other copy. I'll sell to you for $500." And that's all it takes too for a successful shill bid to occur. So, yeah, there's a lot of this stuff that happens in this crazy world of collectibles, and the outlier sales or the random sales or the prices that happen in these markets. We put a lot of faith into them. And the question is, should we always? I don't know.
Right. And I feel like, so, and this is only one thing. And he did, Sean, in that interview talked about collusion between the grading companies and auction houses, kind of conflicts of interest going on there. And, I think everything that happens at that level has a trickle down effect, because, you get all this stuff is very much exacerbated into social media content. And that kind of even goes further into what you said, because, then we get in front of not us, but collectors get in front of their computer or their phones and start watching videos. And we're just, seeing the energy behind, oh, this sold for that and that sold for this. And we buy into that hype. And again, I wanted to let it be known here, nowhere in this stream tonight, am I going to actually, well, outside of the possibility of anybody doing anything unethical, which we know happens in any industry, I'm not trying to single anybody out, because if I did have a single situation where somebody was being unethical, obviously that would not be okay. But I'm not blaming. Actually, like I said, we're going to get to the chapter where I talk about how social media influencers are actually keeping the hobby alive. But
and I think the point of it is just to kind of demonstrate this is an example of something that can happen that affects the perception of what the values could be. And we're not saying like, yes, outlier sales. I think it's pretty obvious, but at the same time, I'm being hyperbolic here.
And at the end of the day, it all comes down, the accountability, it all comes down to us as collectors and consumers. And that's where I talk about things imploding. It all comes down to the perception of the consumer and how they purchase comic books at the end of the day. But I'm going to go to the flip side of this, because we talk about the fair market value lie. So, okay, we talk about there's a lot of things that there's nothing is regulated within like the auction houses and the grading companies. And that's a whole other stream. We could talk about regulation, and I might have some ideas on that. But let's talk about the fair market lie in a sense of how fair market value is not based on supply and demand when it comes to comic books. I talked about this before. Fair market value for comic books can be based in a sense on scarcity, but scarcity doesn't equal rarity. And what do I mean by that? What did I just say about maybe 8 minutes ago? We primarily exist as comic book collectors in an e-commerce market. And in that e-commerce market, even a book that has 1 million copies can, in a sense, be scarce at any given time. What do I mean by this? You go into a Whatnot show, you got 30 people in a Whatnot sale, and somebody's putting up Dark Hawk #1. Probably has 1 million books printed, at least 500,000. And it takes just 20 people, 25 people, 30 people. That is a minuscule sample size of even the greater population of collectors, even though collectors are a minuscule sample size of consumers in any given market. And all it takes is just 2 or 3 people to bid that, 9.8 or even a raw copy of some mass-produced book to sell for twice as much as it's selling for eBay right in that same moment. If you simply just clicked out of Whatnot, went to eBay, and paid for it there. But same with eBay. All it takes, every time we are bidding on a book, we're not, or we're purchasing a book, we're not necessarily basing the value on the actual supply. Because if we were doing that, we could probably, at least pre-COVID, we could get out of our seats in our house, drive down to a local comic book store, most of us, and probably find random back issue books at any LCS for cheaper than you could on eBay. And I'm going to give an example. When I was actually going back and reading all of my Spider-Man runs, and I was reading Web of Spider-Man or Spectacular or Amazing, and I was in like the late 80s, early 90s, when I didn't have a copy and I wanted to read the next copy. The closest shop that I have to my house is still a half hour away. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to get my butt in my car and drive down. I'm willing to wait a few days. I'm going to go on eBay and I'm going to pay $4 for this book plus a few dollars shipping. And I'm okay with that just because I don't want to leave. But I knew that I could get in my car and go down to A1 Comics and find a nice, fine, very fine range grade of this mass-produced random book for $2. So, but now, post-COVID, I don't even think people think like that. We go to Cover Price, we go to Go Collect for random common books. And we look at what they're selling online and we base that as a fair market value when those values are simply based specifically for an e-commerce market that is where the value is determined simply based on a few people wanting the convenience of not leaving their house, or wanting the convenience of having this book right now and bidding up against maybe one other person.
It's called buy it now. It's the premium that they pay for the convenience of having it. And in there is some extra, value that is added there. There is an extra cost that you have to pay. It's like if I order Grubhub, I have to pay because it's getting delivered to me, versus if I walk to wherever, right? Like, and pick it up myself. There is that. So that's kind of baked into it. But isn't that something that is, and I, hey, shout out to our LCSs. I love my LCSs, but isn't that something that's kind of affecting them? Or that's something that they're kind of, falling victim to as well, or chasing?
Yes. And we're going to lead into that. And I love your, the Grubhub.
Yeah.
I love it because can you imagine? Okay. So can you imagine, especially because of COVID? I mean, there was the shopper apps where people were scared to go out. You can use the Instacart or whatever to have people deliver groceries. You pay premiums and you tip. Grubhub, where you don't have to go to the restaurants. They didn't have indoor dining. Can you imagine coming out of COVID and all these restaurants being like, oh, well, I sell my fettuccine plate for, $18, my dinner plate of fettuccine. But with Grubhub, you're paying a premium of $26. So COVID starts opening up. People are like, oh, I'm going to go to the restaurant now. I'm going to go out and eat. And you get to the restaurant, and now the restaurant, you sit down and the fettuccine plate is $26. And you're like, what's going on with this? They're like, well, Grubhub charges you $26. This is what's going on with, and that leads us into our next chapter, the backward state of the LCS. Great segue. So I want to use, we're going to be, before, we dive into the actual state of the LCS and to get your opinion, I want to give another example of kind of the economy right now. We're going to dive deeper into inflation a little later in the show. I'm going to bring it up here, but we're not going to go over the details. But we got to understand that there is a post-COVID market going on right now with this trickle-down effect of, again, value perception. And it's happening with the card market right now, too. And just for an example, mass-produced Topps and Donruss baseball cards from the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, 2019, you can go to a Comic-Con or some, wherever. People were dumping them on Facebook Marketplace. You couldn't give away this stuff. You couldn't give it away. I mean, Barry Bonds rookie cards were down to like $4, like in mint condition. It's like there was no value. Now you could buy a hanger pack, or you can't find a hanger pack for less than like $40. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I don't believe that that's a real value at all. Let me give this an example. Imagine being in COVID, and what were people doing? For one, people were panic buying in COVID, right? So there was that there too. That affected the supply chain, supply and demand. And then, of course, COVID affected the supply chain because a lot of things shut down. And there was gridlock and bottlenecks within the supply chain itself. All those are going to affect inflation and price point. But ultimately, we just talked about paying this premium. We're sitting at home. We can have Amazon deliveries or Instacart deliveries. And, a loaf of bread now goes up from $2 to $5 for that loaf of bread, right? Because you're not going to the grocery store. You're getting it delivered to your house. But now we get into loving the convenience of not going to the grocery store. It's and I'm going outside and my neighbor's out. Hey, neighbor John. Oh, what's up, neighbor Chris? Oh man, yeah, I just got my loaf of bread today for $5. From that Whatnot app. And he's like, oh, I just got my loaf of bread too today for $5. Oh, what a great deal! And I got it from my favorite bread seller on the Whatnot app. Then it's like you're going into these online apps and you're like, man, this is convenience. I got to know my bread seller, my online bread seller. It's like, I like this. And now the grocery stores are thinking, man, all of this online e-commerce stuff, I need to compete with those markets. I'm going to put my loaf of bread at $5. But it's crazy because that's what I feel like the LCS is doing. So Swaggin, actually in my head, when I had that example, it was much better in my head, and I didn't explain it as good as I wanted to, because a part of it is like people are almost, here's what I want to say before we jump in. We're almost at a point where it's like, this goes back to the scarcity on the market. It's not about supply and demand, because we know we could go to any grocery store and find those same loaves of bread, right? Just like we could go to any LCS and find random Dark Hog issue 24, whatever. But our favorite Whatnot sellers only have one copy. Our favorite eBay listers only have one copy at a time. So when neighbor John shows that he got his copy, I'm going out and I'm like, oh, I'll give you $8 for that. And then neighbor Bob over here is like, no, I'll give you $9. No, I'll give you $10. And there's one person on the block sitting back like, guys, why don't you just get in your car and all of you can drive to the store and each of you could get your own copy for $2. So the LCS is now doing that, because now when we drive to the LCS, they're thinking that they need to have the same price as what's going on in eBay and whatnot. And I think that this is an extreme detriment to the LCS. What do you think on that, Swag?
Well, yeah, for the LCS, I think, and listen, I don't run an LCS, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But I think the LCSs that have done that, I have to assume, have not been doing well. And a lot of the dealers that I know, or LCS stores that I know that are doing well, typically do price it under eBay or under, fair market value or last sales and all those sort of stuff. And those people get collections in, they're churning and burning. They have people there in the store all the time, and they're probably killing it, So I think that, if you're chasing kind of this last sale, like you're going to be in trouble. And the convenience tax that is put on all of these books that sell at premium on eBay is just not a realistic thing to expect if you're sort of like a store owner or a shopkeeper. Now, as far as like the Whatnot people and, getting bread FOMO, which is, I think it's just human nature. I think that's just how we operate. It's people will always take the path of least resistance, and they'll always, follow the herd. That's just like a human thing to do. So like, this is where, Whatnot is so easy to buy on that's what makes it so successful, or people get such crazy FOMO there because it's so convenient. It's so fast that, I could walk down to the store and buy bread, but I can get bread here, and that's just where people are at with it.
Right. So, but there is a flip side to this, because this goes back to perception. Now, I do believe in general, and I agree with what you just said, like, and I actually just had a conversation with the LCS owner out in San Rafael. His name was Sam. Big shout out to Sam. San Rafael. If you guys are in the San Rafael area, it's the only shop out there. I think it was like Blue Ocean Comics or something like that. But, I went in there and his back issues were priced solid, and they were all like 25 or 30% off. I got like a Silver Age, probably decent mid-grade Avengers copy run filler for $7 because it was $10, 30% off. But I think there is a perception going on too. So while the LCSs that are doing this probably are struggling more so, I think they've been able to milk it to some extent, because I do believe that there's a perception. And this perception is two things. For one, in comic books, it's just that it's that we cling to what I was saying earlier. We cling to how do we find our fair market values. We look at all these databases that are all about online. So now a lot of collectors, when they go to the LCS, it's probably in the back of their mind like, well, It's fair. It's fair. So I'm willing to pay that price, and they're not even really probably critically or strategically thinking about it. But then the other thing is inflation. And this is where it goes beyond comic books. I believe we are so, I think, brainwashed to believe that everything that's going on right now is just simply inflation. Now, I know that you know, and I'll speak on it briefly here. There's many different things that can affect inflation. It's not that black and white. And in all honesty, when you look at the word inflation, I mean, it basically means, it correlates just to the devaluation of the dollar and raising prices. So you could still consider anytime something increases or the price point increases, you could call it inflation because the price is inflating. I mean, it's that simple. But when we talk about inflation, you look at specific economic factors that drive this. And the one thing is, if we go back to the bread example, I don't believe that the prices that we're seeing, because one thing, it's not just comic books, because remember the bread example, that $2 price of bread is $5 right now at your grocery stores still. It is. Starbucks drinks, I think over the last 2 years have gone up like 40%. You can look at any consumer industry and see food, retail, restaurants, service industries, everything has increased greatly since COVID. And this is what I believe it's due to. I believe it's due to, one, panic buying. Because of COVID, we panicked, especially when it comes to food and toilet paper, right? And then it did have to do with the fact that a lot of people did have more money in their pocket, whether it was from stimulus checks or whether it was just from them not doing anything and being stuck at home. So we got in this comfortable position of spending more money, which is a natural, when demand increases, prices increase to match that higher demand. So that's fair. But what I think is going on right now has to do so much with markets believing that there is a perception among consumers to where they can milk it right now. And that's basically like the market power that companies have. Now, I do have some images I want to bring up, but before we do, Swag, I just want to know if you have any general thoughts on just this idea of where inflation's at and the perception that we have of these prices right now. This is what we should be paying without us even thinking about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't put the genie back into the bottle. Like, that's the thing. Is like once the prices go up, and again, I know we're here to talk about comic books and stuff, but I'll bring it back to comic books. Once the prices go up, it's hard for them to come back down. It's hard for companies to switch gears. Like, even if what you're implying, which is like, if you feel like it's not just inflation why the prices are rising, the fact that they had the opportunity to raise prices doesn't mean they're ever going to go back. It's like, no, this is the new normal now. And on top of that, with inflation, even if inflation comes down, it's still inflating. Inflation actually isn't coming down. It's the rate of inflation that's coming down. And
Right.
so that's something that still is like important to think about. It's like, and so with regards to comic books, you used to say 10 cents on it, then it went to 15, then it went to 25, then it went to $1, and now it's what, $5.99? Like, it's not ever going to go back to $2 cover price. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, I like what you said, and that's very important for all of you guys that want to understand this more, even if it's just in the comic realm of things. Rate of inflation going down doesn't mean that things are getting cheaper. It means things are getting more expensive more slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's bring up some images here, guys. So first off, we got this image here. The US dollar purchasing power and currency in circulation. So basically what they're saying is that this red line is the amount of money that's circulating through within our economy. And the dollar image and how it's cut lower and lower, that line is our purchasing power. It's getting weaker and weaker, right? I'm going to show this too. A dollar's worth. So basically, this is the same thing like purchasing power, value of the dollar. This goes back to like the early 1900s. Now, here's a very interesting thing because this is when the Fed was created. And I'm not going to dive too deep into this swag because this is about comic books. But in my humble opinion, and this goes back to something I said earlier in the stream about, or maybe I said it actually backstage before we went live, but there's always this argument that the more money that's in circulation, it's going to devalue the dollar because, there's just so much of it out there. There's so much demand. People are, circulating so much of it that it devalues it. But to me, that's a lie too, because our money that's circulating is actually heavily controlled by a very small percentage of the population, and it's hoarded. But that's a whole other conversation. Now, the value of our dollar has almost consistently gone down, except one point in time in our history since the Fed was created. And that was when FDR started extremely taxing the rich. And then slowly but surely, those tax brackets and percentages started to drop. And then around the 80s with Reaganomics. And guys, I'm not getting into politics here. Like, look, politicians are all bought out, Democrat, Republican. It don't matter. Like, we're screwed. But, if you are a conservative Republican, if you're a Reagan fan, I'm not mad at you, but you can't lie here. Under Reagan's administration, that's when the taxes on the wealthy, the highest tax bracket, got cut down really hard, and the value of our dollar went like this. All right. So you can argue if that's correlated or not. It is what it is. But so you guys can see the value of our dollar going down. A lot more in circulation, but a lot more of this is being hoarded. And I have some things to prove it, swag. And I want to come back to this with your opinions here. We're also going to look at how comic books has trended next to inflation and the value of the dollar as well. But I'm going to look at these numbers, and I want you to jump in and tell me your thoughts on those charts and how it pertains to these two examples. Since COVID, McDonald's saw $14.56 billion in profit in 2023. This was an increase of over 10% for 2022, and it was the highest profitable year in the company's history.
Should have bought more McDonald's stock.
What's that?
Should have bought more McDonald's stock.
I know, right? Yep. Now, McDonald's CEO's annual salary has more than doubled since 2020, COVID, with another $2 million increasing last year. Now, where am I getting to this? Because, we have an election coming up and all these politicians want to say, oh, it's inflation. And I'm going to give you another example. ExxonMobil saw a record annual profit, historic record profits of $114 billion in 2022. This is right at the height of, the tail end of the peak of COVID. That was up 78% from 2021. ExxonMobil CEO's annual salary increased over 52% with a $4.8 million bonus in 2022. Now, and don't get it twisted. I ain't no socialist, communist. Like, I'm all about the free market. But the point of this is that this isn't a free market. This is called corporatism. Now, swag, the viewers watching are like, okay, guys, what does this have to do with comics? And we're going to get back to the comics, and it's going to be very important. I promise you. But even keeping comics aside here really quick, I want to know your thoughts on how do you feel when you look at charts like this, value of the dollar going down, inflation continuing to shoot up, amount of currency in circulation. And then you have, these are just two examples. I could have used so many more. our biggest multinational conglomerates seeing record-breaking profits during a time when it's supposed to be a recession. The supply chain is supposed to be hurt. Raw goods are supposed to be scarce, and cost of everything is going up, and that's why we need to raise our prices. I mean, McDonald's prices, again, I think it's roughly about 40% over the last few years. What are your thoughts, and do you feel like these things overlap or correlate, and is there something more to it in your humble opinion?
Well, first, let me say that if I was the ExxonMobil CEO and I got a $4.8 million bonus, I would have bought FF1 in a 9.6 for $2 million. But I don't know. We're at the end of the game of Monopoly. I mean, this is the thing. It's like you just like it. This is how it works. It just things get polarized on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and you can still be in kind of a recession, having a bad economy, while also having your securities do extremely well. Like that's just kind of like the world of like the system. So it doesn't surprise me to see some of these numbers. And also too, I wonder, like, is McDonald's actually making profit, like 14.56 billion profit, like in terms of like we're selling like Whoppers and stuff, or what was it, Big Macs? We're selling Big Macs, or like do they just like own assets and their assets have like appreciated because that's just continued devaluation of the dollar and their assets go up. So I don't know. That's kind of my reaction to that. But again,
right. According to my knowledge and my research, that 14.56 billion is strictly from gross earnings from that year, and then they take those, and there was like 2.6 billion like put back into stocks and stuff like that. But I'm not.
Well, people. Well, I just say, yeah, people need to stop buying Big Macs. That's what I'm saying. Like, stop buying Big Macs and go to Well, this is actually there's some good YouTube videos, guys, you should watch. We talked about Grubhub earlier. There's this one that, man, I can't remember what it was, but it was like it was about the inflation, the tax, or whatever you want to call it, the increase of price of like fast food and Grubhub and DoorDash and all these companies that have like created this premium on all these things. And it's like, they're just at a point where it's like, you go to McDonald's, you're spending like $20 for McDonald's. Yep. It's like, dude, you can now go to, I don't know, you can go to like a mom and pop place that actually has good quality food for $20.
Yep.
So people are starting to do that. So I think that, again, we're going to segue this back to people will take the means that it's the most convenient and easiest. So whether that be going to McDonald's, which is still going to be the most convenient than going to the mom and pop place, or buying on Whatnot.
Right. Yep. Yeah, very true. Very true. Me and my son got 2 burgers, no cheese, shared a French fry, like a large fry, and it was $40 at Five Guys. Obviously, Five Guys, better quality than McDonald's, but still, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I want to address this real quick, Parker. This is called capitalism. Actually, it's not. And I want Swags. I'm not speaking for Swag here. I actually want you to jump in here. This is, quite honestly, this is not capitalism. Quite honestly, what you're seeing here, almost in a sense, and again, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but this is almost more communistic. It's monopolistic. It's corporatism, guys. Capitalism, in essence, is supposed to be regulated because capitalism should exist in a democratic society where not only do we vote, bureaucratically, but we vote with our purchasing power. We vote within our political system and all that stuff, where our political system then is in charge of, restricting and holding our government in, or not only our government with checks and balances. It's like the FDA regulates the food industry. And so the FCC regulates, radio and all that. What you have here is corporatism. The base idea of capitalism is privatization of reaping what you sow. Now, when you have 1%, a 1% entity that can buy out a governing body through special interest and bureaucratic politics and all that, to then control, this goes back to my other slides, the cash flow of the money, and to actually almost control the rate of inflation and this perceived free market. This is not capitalism, because it's not a free market. It is a monopolized market, or an oligarchical market, or how you actually say that word, like an oligarchy, where you have such limited power controlling all the resources that, again, what does this go back to? Perception of fair market value. We aren't basing our, or we aren't coming to this fair market value based on free market supply and demand. We're basing fair market value on a stranglehold perception of the actions of a very small few. So Swag, I don't know what you think.
But this is where I would say we talked a little bit about this before we started the stream, where it's like, well, then if this is the system, this is the game, then this is the game, and it is real. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's like, is ASM 129 really worth what ASM 129 is really worth when there's like tens of thousands of copies out there? Well, it's like, well, kind of, I mean, yeah, because people are willing to buy it. People are willing to pay for it. And those copies that are sitting in warehouses that people are hoarding, they're just not listed on eBay. And for that reason, the 20 that are on eBay are the price that they are, and it's the same thing with this, as you say, the greater capitalistic market. Just this is the rules of the game, and therefore this is what the rules are. Not to say that it's good or bad.
Yep. And I like what Figure Drawing said. Free market does not exist. Look it up on Google. No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Figure Drawing. It's so idealistic. And then I want to see what Lyric says here. It's not capitalism. It's the stock market. Tesla isn't worth billions because it's selling like Tesla cars. It's because of funding money from the Fed and government money. And I agree here. And we're not going to get too much into that. But what did I say when I brought up the slides? As soon as the Fed came into place, it's like, oh, now we have a governing, controlling entity. So thank you very much. But it is. It's like, my thing is this, guys. I'm not even sitting here saying this to paint it one way or another. I just want to, and that's why I named the stream. It's like the truth. Like we have to start calling things how they are, even if it sounds nasty or dirty. Call it how it is. This ain't a capitalistic society. We're being controlled and we're being tugged around and puppeted, but that's how it is. And if you guys are okay with existing in it, then just say it. It's like, that's what I'm trying to do here. It's like, play the game, like Swag says. These entities learn how to play the game. So you guys want to get a little bit of power, whether it's in the comic book collecting market, or whether it's in the stock market or big business, or lobbying politicians. Go ahead, because that's the society that we live in. But let's now bring this back to basically the LCS for a brief moment, because I do want to talk about the LCS in so I get your opinion on like competitive pricing and where I feel that plays a role next to just being so fixated on this fair market value. And for me, competitive pricing, and I mean, most of us should probably already have an idea of what that means, but it's like, when you get more so to the closest thing to like free market economics, and you get to that market equilibrium of like, the supply really meeting the demand and the price point falling where it should be for the consumer to be happy and the companies to maximize profits. Like, and again, and I know it's not perfect. I look at competitive pricing as being something that drives that. I mean, of course, if you're an entity and you could get away with selling for these premiums and having your buyers pay it, and we're gonna go into the 90s market here real quick. But do you think competitive pricing in sense of saying, I know what's selling on eBay, I know what's selling on whatnot, I know what's selling online, I want to move my units, I want to get eyes to my LCS, and I want to be competitive in a way to where I can do that. And maybe that means I'm selling my books for cheaper, but I'm able to move it in a way to where that long-term revenue, or maybe maximizing customers, is going to be a better thing for them in terms of that long-term revenue, rather than saying, oh, they're getting it here, I need to get it there too.
Yeah, I think that if you want to be a dealer or comic seller or LCS or whoever, and you want people to come back and come back to your store or tune back into your sale, I mean, yeah, if you leave a little meat on the bone for that person, like, they'll definitely do it. Like, I always buy from the same people, because the way that they price things, to me, I feel like I'm getting instant equity when I buy stuff from them. So, by doing that, I've spent way more money, with them than the whatever little pennies that they wanted to, get the maximum value out of the book, from me, if they wanted to really sell it at like 100% fair market value. But instead they decided to sell it at whatever, 70%, 80% fair market value. And therefore I've bought many, 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 many things from them. So I don't know. I mean, that this is kind of like I don't know if this is like a hey, sellers, catch up with the times, but this is kind of where people are at, with people buying comic books. Is like, everybody wants deals. I think everyone got so used to getting like the peak price or the COVID price or the premium value or selling the top or whatever, that it just got too easy, for a lot of people. And so now it's hard for them, like we've kind of said, to put that genie back in the bottle and lower their price or take a loss on a book that they overspent on. And I think they're making it worse for themselves. I think those sellers are making it worse, because the people that are just willing to sell, hey, blow it out, 30% off, whatever, they're I think doing really well.
Absolutely. I agree. And I'll go back to my example. It's been like, I think over 3 years now, where there was that shop ever since I moved out to the Sacramento area. Large 50-cent bins, $1 bins. And I found it was like, it was 2021, because it was right when around WandaVision, and it was one of the Wanda and Vision, Scarlet Witch and Vision miniseries. It wasn't even one of the keys. It was a later issue, wasn't the first appearance of the kids. And it was beat up. It was beat up. It had to be maybe a good, very good. And it was in his dollar bin, and I brought it up, and he looks at it, and he's like, "Oh man, this is hot right now. Yeah, I can't let this go. This is $4. Can't let this go. $4. I'm like, I'm good. Walked out, made a video on it. Ain't walked back in since. And it's like, now where is that book? It's probably not even in his dollar bin anymore. It's probably in his 50-cent bin, because nobody cares. So and I was a customer that would go in there. I drop, a couple dozen dollars, every month on some new books and some back issue books. So now we lost me. So
and this is something, like, let me just say two things off this point. I think this is like super important, for people who buy and sell, or I guess really we're talking about people who sell, especially if you're selling to like new collectors who are getting into this game, and they're like buying this whatever new book or the hot book or whatever it is. Like, if you really want to not take them for everything, because as soon as you do, you're going to burn people, and you're going to scorn them, and people are going to learn the hard way. And a lot of those people are going to never come back, because they feel like, oh, I got totally burned on all this stuff. And I think that happened to a lot of people, in 2021. And I can't fault all the dealers, because again, hey, this is the price that sold for recently, therefore this is my price too. And that's not really their fault, because who knows? Like, even at that time, nobody really could have, predicted like, okay, all these prices are going to come down, but I think that's an important thing to do for the people who are like the new collectors and getting into it, and making sure that they feel good about their purchases. And this is another thing too, when I do like my videos and my index comic book stuff, I think a lot of people think that the point of me making this stuff is so that I'm like trying to, do day trading with comic books and stuff, which is really not it. It's like, hey guys, here's sort of where things are at. And again, take it all with a grain of salt, because who really knows, fair market value, as we decided, is kind of like, fugazi. But the way it's looking, things are going down. So therefore you should be really careful with what you buy a book for. You should probably try to get it around here if you really want it, and that's kind of the point of why I make this stuff. Because again, it's about just people not getting taken for every single dollar, with this stuff. It's really important that people feel like they're getting a book that they like and also for a good deal. Anyways, that was my little PSA.
Absolutely. Just want to look at a couple comments here real quick, and then we're going to move on to the next segment. The USA Cool Boy says year over year inflation is a mechanism that actually benefits people. What doesn't benefit people is corporate greed, and that's what we're seeing at levels not since the Depression. And I think I agree with this, and I think where he says where inflation can benefit people is especially if you look at assets. And Swag, we talked about that the other day in our conversation, like, because I brought up, it's like, look, guys, the majority of comic books, when you buy them off the shelf, they depreciate in value. And that's another thing that people just don't want to tell the truth about, especially modern books. You buy a comic book off the shelf, it's going to depreciate in value. It does. I'm looking at 3 boxes right now, like DC Rebirth and New 52 stuff that I paid $2.99 for, and I'm selling them, hoping I could sell them for $1 each. But that's what I said too. It's like, even if you go back to Copper or Bronze Age books, you think these books are like collectible, valuable assets. If you look at the rate of inflation and you're selling a book, a Bronze Age 60-cent book for $2-3 each, I mean, you're basically selling it for cover price based on inflation. But
yeah,
the thing,
a dollar bin book that was a dollar bin 20 years ago is still a dollar bin book.
And that's, well, yeah, exactly. But you did make a good point, because if you bought a book for 60 cents in 1982 and you sell that book for $2 or $3 now, well, having that book was a better investment than holding on to those 2 quarters and a dime, because those 2 quarters and a dime can't even get you a comic book. They can't even get you a candy bar anymore. They can't get you nothing. But now you sold that book for $2 or $3, and now you can go still buy a candy bar, maybe 2, depending if they're on sale at Safeway or something. Yeah. So I think that's a good point to look at, and maybe that's what kind of
you could say that. I mean, or maybe an even better example would be like, well, what if you bought $100 book, 10 years ago, and you sold it for $150 today? But if you compared that to like, well, what if I bought the S&P like 10 years ago and spent that $100, assuming that was what the ETF was? But would you have 150 in it today? Would it have grown at a bigger rate? Chances are probably would have. I think that's the thing with comic books. It's like there's only a few of them that I think outgrow, like a ETF or whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing I want to, and this is going to lead us into our next segment. Another thing is, if you're not paying cover price, and over the last 20, even 30 years, you've been buying comic books as a collectible, as an investment, and you're paying a premium for a book. And what if you bought a book for $100 25 years ago, and now you could still sell that book for $120, but because of the rate of inflation, maybe you're actually losing money. Or if you bought it for $400 and you sell it and it hasn't grown, then you're losing money. Or like many things that we've seen over the last 5 years, you paid some crazy prices because of COVID, and now you can't even get that.
Which is why always you got to buy what you like, because the value you may lose in it, you still got in the joy of having it. So, if anything, one of the reasons I love comics is that even if I sell it for half the value 5 years later or a year later, it's kind of like, I mean, it's great that I got some value out of it.
Yeah.
On top of the joy that I had holding it.
Yeah. It's kind of like buying a, $20 t-shirt. You wear it a few times, but then it gets worn out, shrinks, got a hole in it. And, you give it to Goodwill. You don't even care about getting any money back. Like I enjoyed that shirt.
I mean, like in the world of like nerd stuff, like comics, at least comics, you can get some value back out of it versus like, I don't know, like there's other stuff. If you spend your money on like, I don't know,
very true.
Video games, you don't maybe don't get the same value back.
Yeah. Well, at least I can still play my old Nintendo games, but all right, we're going to get into the FOMO in a down market, guys, but real quick, amazing pop culture podcast. Thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you so much. If comics book values went to zero, what comic books would each of you collected and why? Well, let's make this real quick. For me, any book that I want to read, because it's just like, buying a book from Barnes & Noble and you want to read it. Spidey books, X-Men books, anything I want to read. Swag, you got any specifics?
What comic books would you each of you collected and why? Well, it's still all my childhood comic books that I really care about.
Yeah.
Like my personal Darkhawk 1 copy that I grew up with. Like that one is the one that's like, yeah, I'm not selling that one. There's no amount of money you can offer me. Well, okay, that's not true, but you know what I mean.
Thank you so much, Pop Culture Podcast. Appreciate it. All right, so let's get into this now, because we talked about, we know what's been going on the last few years since COVID. And I admitted myself that I was naive. I mean, I understood what was going on, but I think even in myself, I was kind of caught up in the hype. We talked about fair market value. We talked about how, our perception of fair market value is based on such a small microcosm of what is truly out there if we were actually looking at supply and demand in all marketplaces. But we're in a down market. And to what you said about the LCS, I do think that we're going to have more and more collectors. Maybe they've been burnt. Maybe they're realizing, like, look, I'm looking for that discount. I'm looking for that good deal. I want to go to an LCS and see, 30% off back issues. I think that's going to continue to grow and grow now in this down market. But there's a flip side to this. And that's that FOMO is still absolutely crazy. Let's briefly talk about live action FOMO, because you would think ever since COVID, we would realize right now as a collective, when a trailer drops or a character gets announced or an actor gets announced to play a character, these books are going to shoot up and they're going to come crashing down shortly after, whenever the movie releases or whatever, and we're on to the next thing. But people keep doing it. But then there's new trends, and we go to the comic pack breaking. Briefly here, for those that may not know, 3 comics, X-Men 97 variants, the 1 in 200, the 1 in 2000 gold, the signed ones, looks like a baseball card pack. And we got the pack breaking phenomenon going on right now. And I talked briefly earlier about what's going on with the card market. I had a good private conversation with Ony Oz, who has a great channel and is very well versed in the card market. Talk to me about what's going on. It's just crazy. We have this perception. We put so much money into these cards, sports cards, during COVID. People were bored. People had money in their pockets. Boom, boom, boom. Demand goes up. The emotion of the live auction, and now worthless over manufactured cards are selling for buku money. To me, it's not sustainable. So now, same thing with comic books. It's great marketing. I saw these packs go for 150, 250, and I didn't see it, but somebody said they were going up to 500 in Rob Liefeld's stream. This is FOMO. I mean, no matter how you cut it, there's emotional. It's emotional there. But like I said, I'm not knocking anybody. Look, if you got the money, you want to blow it, maybe you really care about getting your hands on these things. But Swag, 2 questions for you. Or maybe 3. 1, and you can answer them in whichever, order you want. 1, is there going to be any values and any value in these comic variant from these comic pack breaks or comic packs? Is there going to be any value in them? 2, are people buying into this because there's not just a fear of missing out, but do you think they fear the down market and they're holding on to this like emotional FOMO because it gives them a sense that, oh my gosh, this is something that we are excited for, that's selling and selling, and look at these prices, they're going for this much, and they're kind of tricking themselves psychologically in their brains that, man, the comic book market is still going strong.
Well, as Sacto put it in the chat, number one, no, which your question was, are these things going to hold value? Let me extend an olive branch. I don't know. Isn't there one in there that's like the one of one sketch signed, whatever, whatever? Like if you win the grand prize, like maybe, okay, that one book in the pack, sure, maybe it'll have some value because you literally have the one copy and you get to dictate the price. So there. But I'll say this. It's probably not, because I mean, how long is it going to be before they introduce the next one? When they roll out here's our ASM mystery packs now, and here's the Miles mystery pack, and here's the Gwen mystery pack. And like, it's going to dilute itself, like, because it's a successful product selling a tremendous amount. And why wouldn't they do it again? So they're going to do it again. And of course, the same buyers are going to jump on that. And the more books that you introduce, it's going to deflate the value, because there's only so much money that wants to go to this type of product. And eventually it's going to run out. So that's something that people have to consider. Now, with regards to like the FOMO stuff, something I think is interesting, and I don't know, maybe you kind of have this experience too, is in doing my YouTube channel, I'll definitely notice like there will be a decent amount of people who will comment from time to time, be like, hey, I'm new to collecting, or I just started 2 months ago or whatever. And it's like, to me, it's crazy. That's like, wow, like you just started now, like you missed the whole COVID craziness. Like, man, you're actually coming in at a great time. Like, in a way, like this is so much better to start now than like if you got back in 2021. But I think that the turnover in comics is very high. So that perpetual cycle of FOMO, like, why does this keep happening? Is like, well, because I think there's just new people who are like coming in and they fall into like the same pitfalls and same traps that, happen, in comic books and stuff. So I think that it's kind of like a regular thing, and it's human to FOMO, and who knows why they're buying it. I mean, if someone spent $500 with Rob Liefeld, like maybe to them, the memory of buying it directly from him was the value that they got out of it. I mean, that's a really charitable, assumption that I'm making, but at the same time, like maybe that is, maybe people just want to support. They just want to buy the product. They just like it, and it's okay to them. I think the mechanisms of Whatnot are what they are, and I'm trying to be fair. Like, there's nothing wrong with Whatnot making the mystery packs. And I said it in my video, I think it's okay to make this as a product, but like, the machine is the machine with Whatnot is. It capitalizes on FOMO and like the dopamine hits and the addictive tendencies that we all have. And I think that there's just some people that can't control themselves, and so they just, I don't want to say fall for it, but they just play in that world and they play in that game. And I don't know, it just, there's always going to be someone who's willing to do it. So I don't know. FOMO is forever, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Dart Lopez, thank you so much. Appreciate the super chat. California soil. Dark Hawk 3 newsstand.
California soil, Dark Hawk 3 newsstand.
I think that might be a reference to yesterday's video.
Oh,
we're gonna FOMO over the newsstand copy of the
right.
But thank you so much, Dar Lopez, man. Much
Thanks,
respect to you. Truly appreciate it. I hear that, and I feel like I think there is. Believe me, it's insane, and I think culturally, I personally think the dopamine rush, gimme, need. I do think it's problematic. I mean, it's culturally problematic, in my humble opinion. Now, does that mean I'm going to sit and concern myself with it when other people do it? No, but I do feel that it's kind of like when the new iPhone comes out. These people that camp outside to get the new iPhone, they know it's not going to, they're going to be paying a premium. They're doing all this. They know that they could be able to get it for $200 cheaper, maybe a couple months from then, but they still do it. So maybe it's not about a return on investment always. Maybe they just want to be a cool kid for whatever reason, and it just
Yeah.
gives them that, right? So
Yeah. I think it's like yeah, it's like with the Whatnot thing, and I don't know if you guys have seen, again, we're going to kind of go off a little off topic. We're going to bring it, but I'll bring it back, guys. The social network, where it's or not the social network, the social dilemma, that Netflix film, where it's social media creates these machinations and ways in which people get addicted to screen, and it keeps you on site. Your time on site is like really the thing that they're going after, and they use these tactics. And is there anything wrong with it? No, not necessarily. And is social media inherently bad? No, but like, is it really the best thing? Is it really like the way that is the most beneficial to the end user and the consumer? Probably not. Probably not. But you can't like fault them for doing it. So really, at the end of the day, it comes down to that individual to kind of just determine like, hey, is this something I really want to buy? And maybe there's like a test that people can use. It's like, how many of the books that you've bought in your time collecting do you look upon fondly versus like how many do you look upon like, man, I actually just I don't feel good that I bought that, or I wish I didn't buy that one.
Right.
And I think you want to just have more fond books than not fond books.
Right.
And no matter
how much you paid for them.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's books I've overspent on that I'm still like, yeah, I'm happy I have that. Right. So I think that that's the thing that you got to do. And if it turns out that the X-Men 97 packs or whatever they are ones that you look back on and you're like, I don't know, it doesn't make me feel good that I have that. Then you can like assess, all right, what am I doing wrong here?
There you go. Very good. So let's dive into this a little bit more. And then I'm going to get into maybe a shocking statement here, but like, and again, I've always been one, every time someone says, oh, it's the 90s all over again, I'm like, no, it's not. Because you have a lot of different things happening that aren't the 90s. I mean, the publishers, the industry has learned from the 90s, but I do feel, and it was a little tongue in cheek, but I shared Whatnot's little post of the seller where he was like, oh man, the heartbeats are getting, which goes to show that, I mean, they're buying it. I mean, they're selling the dopamine rush so hardcore.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I was like, greatest marketing since the 90s. Get that bag, and I'm not mad. I am being a little tongue-in-cheek because I'm like, but I'm not being tongue-in-cheek to Whatnot. I'm not being tongue-in-cheek to Marvel for the sellers. I'm being tongue-in-cheek because it's like, are people really spending this much money? Like, come on, but go ahead. But what I know, I am worried. I am a little worried because in this down market, the only thing left is the dopamine fix, is the emotion.
Yeah, that's true.
And Whatnot knows, Marvel, DC, the publishers know, the sellers know, everybody knows this is how we get our money. And where does that leave? This is why I say 90s on steroids, because what was going on in the 90s crippled comic books so much that Marvel was going to go bankrupt. Like, I mean, and it took these characters away from the comic books, and we had to start getting back into movies to at least get my generation then back into the comic books at a later time to say, okay, this stuff is still kind of cool. Like, I am worried that because that's all that's there, what does that really truly mean for the hobby? Like, and let's go outside of just FOMO buys or live action spec or these crazy gimmicks, because that's what call them. I mean, everything that's marketed as a gimmick, these are amazing gimmicks. I'm not using gimmick as a bad word, but it's a gimmick because they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to play into your emotions. But let's look at YouTube and the drama that sells in the comic book community. Look at social media when it comes to politics. It's like when we talk about politics, there's nothing, say one person likes one candidate. You never hear them talking about what they like about that candidate. They're busy talking crap about the other candidate. So it's like everything is based on this dopamine rush of FOMO, drama, whatever it is. And there's no substance. Is the comic book collecting community burnt out on simple comic collecting, so they're resorting to that quick fix? And believe me, I know how drugs work. Are we going to get dope fiend out? Are we just going to get so burnt out on the dope to where it's either just going to kill us or just run us down?
I mean, let's be fair. I think that this is a problem for every industry, because the more media that comes out, which is every day, the more YouTube channels that are made, the more movies that are made, the more comics that are made, blah, blah, blah. Everyone is competing for everyone's attention, so you're Marvel and DC, you're not just competing against each other. You're competing against like the Instagram reel of like the guy who like gets run over by a car, so you have to cut through the noise. And I think these companies know that, and they have to market to like the whales, or they have to do the gimmick that's really going to break through, because like selling a story is hard. Like selling hey, this is really like written well, Batman's newest adventure. Like it's so hard for that to be how you get people into a comic book store, as opposed to like a little bit of like, hey, here's this rare chance you got your lotto ticket here, and that's just what works. So I'm sympathetic to them in that regard of like having to like do these gimmicks to cut through the noise. But yeah, I think that I don't think that the comic stories really matter all that much anymore, to be honest. A lot of people will talk about like, oh, if Marvel and DC had better writing, that would fix all of comic books problems. I'm like 100% no. Like, because there is good writing. There's a lot of bad writing.
Yep.
A ton of bad writing. But there is really good writing too, and that's not enough. And let's be honest. And forgive me, guys, if you're somebody who reads your floppies, I'm sorry, but the vast majority of the readers, comic readers, are reading trades or digital.
Yep.
The vast majority.
Yep.
Shout out to you. If you're the guy who reads your floppies, like you're an exception. But most people who buy floppies are buying it for the collecting, speculating value thing, So even with the these mystery packs and stuff, which is like, again, this kind of brings it back to that topic, but we'll circle back here. Is they're making these things, and there's nothing wrong with it, but we know what it is. Like it's catering to like the speculator market, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, this is the last group of people that you can sell to. The variant cover people and the 1 in 100 people and the collectors, in that way. And I don't know, it's really hard too, because I in knowing my audience, which again, you're probably similar too, like I think, and probably the people in the chat here, most of us, when we talk about comics and we collect and we do videos, most of us are more like in the vintage side. That's more what we're interested in. Like I still read some modern stuff, and I'll occasionally talk about X-Men 97 news packs and things like that. But the vast majority, I know the people who watch my videos really only collect back issues. And I don't know if there's like anything that Marvel or DC can do to get them to read a new comic book. Like, even if it was good, like, I just don't think they're that interested. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if that was your original question, but that was kind of where I was.
No, yeah.
I
mean, that's good. And it really points us to the fact that, like, I really think there's, and I don't want to get too much into this because this is sidebarring, but, and I think I talked about this recently about like the floppy without variants. I've never been a big fan of variants. I love art, but I've never been a fan of paying a premium just because the cover is different.
Yeah, same.
Variants are the reason, in my humble opinion, why floppy comic books still exist. You can even look at sales on Comic-Con, like month after month. Variants have been the majority of the direct market sales, and if we collect variants still to just collect them or to read them or to collect our favorite runs, thank a variant collector or a variant buyer, even if you hate them, because if not, we are leaning into taking comic books. And remember, a comic book is a book that uses images and words. It's not just this floppy thing. It's like Dog Man and all those things. Those are comic book readers in a sense, because they're taking the same formula. I mean, we could go completely separate and have one industry of floppies where it's just FOMO hype. variants, foils, pack breaks, you know, and then we have the Marvel and DC readers that every new story is produced in collections, in trades, in graphic novels, and straying away from the floppy, because the floppy is so outdated for so many reasons. But that, again, that's a whole other story. But I do hear you, and I agree with what you said. And I do think that this FOMO, the drama, I think this emotion that we're holding on to is a bigger cultural issue. But we'll leave it at that right now. But let's turn it around now to this idea of where we're at and how social media influencers, in my humble opinion.
Before we do, can I just say one more thing about variants really quick?
Yes.
I got to shout out variant. Listen. I'll eye roll with you guys. You know, I definitely get the biggest, like, here we go, you know, type of mentality when I see certain variants. And by the way, I at some point I have to make this video. I don't know if you guys caught this one, but there's like a New York Comic-Con variant coming up of the Venom 3 first null, but now it's a foil. You know, I saw someone make it. I'm just kind of like, okay, you know, that's sort of my feeling. But with variants, you know, like you said, it's important because there are a lot of positives that come out of it. And I think the best version of variants are when you do have like a really cool artist who comes in and can do their own, like, their style on something that is in service to that story. That's what variants were supposed to be, you know, is like, here's kind of like this other artist interpretation. So they are good things. And yes, modern comic books and new variants and stuff, it's really important that they're successful, you know. And I know there's a lot of, again, love everyone, you know, who watches the videos and stuff, but there's definitely a lot of the people who are like more vintage collectors and they'll say like, oh, you know, don't buy all these stupid variants, buy like old comic books, you know, like a real comic book. And I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, if new comics are not selling, all our comics are going to zero, because like you have to get new people in, and they're not going to start collecting Golden Age.
Absolutely.
Like they have to start with modern comic books. Anyways, sorry. But let's talk about influencers and social media.
Yeah. And that leads us to this. So it's like, again, whether you like it or not. So we talked about, we brought up the variant thing and how it's keeping floppies alive. And like, no matter what we talked about today, fair market value, you know, you got YouTubers, you got the top 10 list, and, you know, we're just pulling these numbers and we're hyping it up and all this stuff. But you got to think about it. Again, we live in this e-commerce social media world, so much so. And we're seeing LCSs fall to the wayside more and more every year. If it wasn't for comic book, and I say influencers, you know, because that's what everyone else uses. Everyone influences everyone. Content creators, you know, personalities, whatever it is. But, you know, when you think about people like, you know, Comic Tom, who, you know, like him or not, Comic Tom is essentially the godfather of the comic book YouTuber. You know, he's not the most successful, because you got people that review comics that have, is it you know, where they actually explain the stories, and they have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But, you know, for all of us in this market,
for comic collecting YouTube,
Comic
Tom is the top. But you know, the comics explain stuff. Yeah.
Right. Comics explain. That's what I was thinking of. Now, and, you know, you could call, or, you know, you know, you got a lot of the dealers like Very Gary, Bry's a big dealer, and I know Tom's a dealer too, but, you know, he's very unique, I think, still in what he does, you know, and he's revolutionized the hot 10, you know. And maybe, yeah, you know, and I've realized that, again, going back to this, it only takes one or two people. I realized when I was doing like comic books to invest in videos, and I tried to talk about books that nobody else was talking about, and I would see books from there land up on Cover Price's top 10 just because I talked about it. So it goes to show you, and I was a little naive about this, it goes to show you how much of a niche market this is. And now you can get one YouTuber. Back then, maybe I had less than 10,000 subscribers, and I'm talking about a book, and I'm even saying in the video, don't buy it just because I'm talking about it. But And then sales go up and it lands on a cover price top 10 selling comic books. Whether you think that this is okay or not okay, or people are just influencing or whatever it is, we are tuned in. Comic book YouTubers are, in my humble opinion, maybe to say the face of the hobby right now isn't the right word to describe it, but they are a driving force that keeps us as collectors interested, buying, FOMOing, knowing what's coming down the pipeline, knowing all the hot drama, whether it's silly drama between YouTubers or drama with CBCS suing PSA or Banana Gate and all this stuff. We're clinging to Instagram. We're clinging to YouTube. And this is part, I mean, the comic book hobby, and again, it goes back to what I was saying about the FOMO. We almost get more out of all of the social media interaction than we do the comic book. And because of this, thank a social media influencer.
Yeah.
Swag.
Well, shout out to Beyond Wednesdays, Brian in the chat. One time when I had him on my channel, we were talking about this, how it's like, I know we all kind of, there's people who like, don't like the hot list or whatever, but we talked about how it's like the hot lists in a lot of ways are the lifeblood of at least the back issue collecting world. Like you have to know what's kind of going on. And again, yeah, like it's like you said, it's not now's the time to buy those books, but it shows you, oh, here's what's happening in the world. And yeah, YouTube has become the LCS, which by the way, like I really think, in terms of what's going to solve comic books, I'm going to keep saying this until I'm, blue in the face, but I just think not the stories, not the better writing or, the price and stuff. I really think the biggest aspect that's missing is like the community factor, at least from a top down level of Marvel and DC. Like they got to get people into the LCSs, they got to sell the lifestyle of comic books. Right. That's what, not even just the stories. They got to get people into the store and just hanging out and arguing over who's stronger, Hulk versus Thing and all that stuff. Like that's what you need. And YouTube has become that in a lot of ways. But I think Marvel and DC could do a lot better to actually get people out of their rooms and into the stores.
Yeah, I would love to. We're winding down. We got a couple more things to go over before we wrap up here. Very, very important things. So don't go yet. I would like to maybe bring you back on and maybe even have a third person to actually kind of piggyback off of that and really, focus on the state of the LCS and figure out how we can take this evolving world that we live in, because it's not just the comic book market, it's the evolution of mankind and our society, and I think we just got to accept that. But there are things that we can do to continue to move this hobby along for sure.
And Comic Journey, who was here earlier, he's been wanting to do a show like that, so shout out to him.
Nice. Okay, so I want to go over a couple of things. So we got the big question that I want to ask, but before we do, I do want to bring up a couple things, because we're just going to kind of like reiterate. We're going to pull up a few images here just to reiterate everything that we talked about today. And I want to go into these images right here, which just show, big shout out to Swag for providing these for me. Go Collect has an index, and this goes back to what, 2015?
Yeah, this is these ones are 2015.
And this is your index that you created, and that goes back to
2018.
So if you look here, we got golden, silver, bronze, copper, and modern. And just like we were talking about, the rate of inflation. I mean, if you look at how the comic books have trended, just 15, 20 degrees upwards or whatever it is, if even that at certain times. I mean, especially moderns. I mean, moderns not really doing much until COVID. But you got to see there's so much more into investing in comics or looking at fair market values, and understanding that there's a bigger thing going on here, in that comic books aren't just something that, oh my gosh, it's a collectible, it's going to make me money. All right. It becomes exacerbated to be that when other factors that are emotional factors come into play. And we saw that with COVID. And you see, boom, boom, everyone, except for what? Golden Age. Why? Because for one, Golden Age has much more precedent. And I do believe that Golden Age is actually a collectible asset or an investment asset. And you don't have people FOMOing over Golden Age when a movie trailer comes out. So I think there are different elements in swag. Can you maybe speak on that just a little bit about what you may think differentiates Golden Age?
Yeah. Well, I think the supply side is really the biggest factor when it comes to the Golden Age. Here's the thing: like, if Hulk 181, the first Wolverine, the Bronze Age book, if there were only 100 copies that existed in the world, it would be as expensive as Action Comics 1, because like that's how popular Wolverine is.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But so really why Golden Age is the most consistent is because you just can't undercut other people. Now, that's not to say that Golden Age doesn't go down, because it definitely goes down. And actually, one of the things, like some of the lesser known Golden Age keys, like they definitely have dropped, because I think a lot of people move their money from one to the other. Like, you might sell that one Silver Age book to buy the Golden Age book. And I think a lot of dealers did that, where they like kind of traded their money into safer comics throughout this like down market. But the reality is like, if there's no new money coming in, eventually all of them are going to go down.
Right.
But it is the safest in terms of like, if you want to buy a comic and hopefully it doesn't go down in value.
Right.
Golden Age for sure.
Yeah. And we do see, and you had another image that you did that showed the trending lines. And I should have brought that in, but I liked it because it really goes to show. It's funny because, and this is some optimism. And for every age of comics, even moderns, it seems that we're almost getting to where the trending line is evening out and correcting to where it probably should be, to see now this kind of continued rate of inflation or whatever, or growth, over time.
Yeah. And I think, it's kind of like if you slash out all the inflation of COVID, like it's kind of where we're at, is probably where it would have been if things were just normal the last 4 years.
Right.
In theory, that's what it would be. I think we're kind of in a weird place because, something I was thinking about where like you have all these copies. And again, it goes back to like that, like what is the real fair market value and what's rare and what's scarce and stuff. It's like, because the prices went up so much, that motivated people to grade books, to go into their basement, pull out that old collection that I haven't looked at in a long time. Because it's one thing if it's like you find out, oh, that book I have, oh, it's oh wow, it's $50. That's one thing. But if it's like, oh, it's $5,000, oh well shit, I gotta like, I might want to sell this now, So things got so expensive that all those comics got flushed out from those basements and grandpa's garage and all those garage sales, and everyone was finding them. And then they got all thrown on eBay. So now we're kind of just figuring it out, right? Like it's
Right.
like that normalization again.
Yep.
Of like, okay,
And-
where is this really valued at? And
Right.
there could be an idea that maybe it'll go even less than what it was before,
Right.
because maybe before COVID, there were a lot of those comics that were in collections in those garages that people just weren't motivated to pull out.
Yep.
And like you said, as at the start of the show, the fair market value was the fair market value because what was available was what was available. Yeah,
exactly. And that goes back, and I want to circle that back to the fact that people are still trying to price, the go to the loaf of bread analogy, or the DoorDash analogy, or Grubhub, where it's like, oh, well, I want to keep charging this premium. We'll see. I think we will see if people continue to keep that perception, or if it evens back out, or like Swag said, now there's so much more out there, it might even go lower. I want to read this, and then we're going to go into our closing statement. So this was pulled from the Roosevelt Institute. This was an article written in December of 2022. I'm just going to go right into it. Today's inflation comes mostly from sectoral supply side disruptions, largely the result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent disturbances to supply chains. So what they're saying is there was actual disruptions in the supply chain, which bottlenecked the supply chain, which drove this demand to this smaller supply, which drove prices up. Continuing on, demand patterns too have undergone significant changes, again, largely induced by the pandemic. In some sectors, these effects have been amplified as a result of the exercise of market power. So I believe what they're saying here is now we're giving these companies market power based on the fact that one thing happened, which was a bottleneck in supply, and we were panic buying. Now we give them market power. That's what Swag was saying at the beginning of the show. Well, once it goes up, once the price, we ain't never taking it down. And that's what's happening now. That's why it's not true inflation. Now we are perceiving, because we were panic buying, now that the supply chain is back to where it is, we are in this perception of this is how much it should be. Let me continue on. But today's inflation, for the most part, is not the result of significant excesses of aggregate demand, such as might have arisen from excessive U.S. pandemic spending. So again, there's basically, and Swag, you can correct me or read into it a little differently, but I believe what they're saying there is that this didn't come from natural supply and demand, like what we were doing with our money. We panic bought the bottleneck of the supply chain, and then we had all this excess money to create this illusion of demand that was not sustainable, because once everyone went back to work, people, we didn't have that money anymore. We didn't have the stimulus checks, and we didn't have the leisure of having money in our pockets because we weren't commuting gas. We weren't taking trips. We weren't eating out. Now we had less disposable income, but now all these prices are so high, and the industries are flexing their market power and saying they ain't coming down. And I think that's kind of where we're at for all these industries, and that's where comics are at right now, and how we have this perception of comics, and it goes to what we just said. But will supply and demand be strong enough to actually get us back down to say, well, shit, I don't got that much money in my pocket right now, and it's going to force these sellers to say, I got to bring my books down or I'm not going to move anything.
Yeah. I mean, to this quote, I don't really, sure, maybe there's some supply side disruptions, but I really just think that, you turn on the money printers, just the value of the dollar goes down, and all assets go up. So people just felt more rich in COVID time. And so they were more willing to buy that $1,000 key comic book, because they're like, well, my stock portfolio is up today, so who cares?
Right. Perfectly stated. Okay. So guys, just, look, buy what you love, but be smart. Fair market value is not a science. Do your research, and look, don't just buy on whatnot. Go visit your LCS, see what they got. That
embrace the hunt. Embrace the hunt, because that's really the best way. The best way to get value is to buy something that you find for half the price.
All right, Swag. I know you got it. I know you got some very important stuff to get to, but my last little segment here, we're going to close on this note. Will the hobby implode? Let me just say something really briefly, and I'll let you get final word. I think you see all these issues going on. Look at the grading industry right now. There's a lot of issues, and I think we're going to finally see that CGC is fallible. I think we're going to finally see that. But I think the grading industry is going to come out stronger because of it. I think we're seeing a lot of this emotional FOMO stuff. We're really navigating into the e-commerce and the live stream, the dopamine. And in some ways, I think it is the 90s, but even worse. But I do believe that there's a flip side to that. I think all of this is a shifting of gears, and there may be a lot of craziness. Some things may explode, but I don't think we're going to implode. I think we're going to explode. It's kind of like when a fire goes through a forest, burns all those trees down, but then a couple months later, you see all this new green coming up. I think the comic book hobby is kind of in this interesting state that might be compared similar to that. What are your thoughts about the future and the uncertainty of comic books as a hobby?
Yeah, I think it's like you kind of put it well. It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. You know, I think that there will be a new something that emerged from this. I don't think it's going to totally implode. I think it's going to change for sure. As far as the collecting side of things, I don't know. I'm on the one hand, I think that, you know, we talk about like something like Null, like the Venom 3 trailer that came out and everyone was buying up the Null books. Not to say that Venom 3, like that book is like worth what it was in its peak prices, but we're kind of getting back into that world where people like, again, they see the thing on the trailer and then they hit buy it now. And we're not in that for a long time. You know, like we that was like how it worked before. And then COVID happened and then everyone got ahead of it. You know, they started buying the thing before the trailer even came. And then it like really, you know, that whole model collapsed. And now we're kind of getting back into that. So I think like with that, there was going to be sort of a return to that normal. And, you know, if prices and all this stuff can kind of stabilize, then people can gain faith into buying comics to invest in them sort of mindset. And there'll be more positivity around it. You know, I think people, you can sort of make a 10 books to buy, say, video again and not be met with cynicism. Like people be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, oh, good picture. And like, maybe I'll keep my eye out for those. You know, I think that we might get back to that world, which I think is good. I think it's fun to be in that space. But as far as graded comics and stuff, yeah, I think this Ben Gates stuff really probably hurt CGC more than some of the other things, you know, because it could be a huge problem. And PSA definitely seems like they're going to be a threat. You know, I think they have a long way to go, but they'll certainly, you know, it's going to be interesting what happens to them, you know, next year. But at the same time, I still kind of think like, you know, we're really in it. Like if you and me and everyone in this chat right now, like the fact that we're here, like we're pretty, you know, knee deep in comic books, like to be on a YouTube stream, you know, hanging out and talking comics and stuff. I kind of think that the vast majority of people who use CGC have never heard the word Banana Gate. Like I don't know, like I could be wrong, but I'd be surprised if it was more than 20% of people. So I say that as to suggest that I think, graded comic books probably have taken a hit. Like I think that they're probably not getting the same volume, but at the same time, I think that their CGC is a pretty big machine. Like they definitely do very well. If you go to see them at the cons and stuff, like there's a lot of people who just grade like their sketch variants with CGC. Yeah. Like they do very well with like the artist signing, drop off your books market. And so I think that they have enough business there to keep them afloat. But I'm pretty positive overall, I think, of where comic collecting will be in the next couple of years.
Yeah, real quick. With PSA coming in, you know, and you got CBCS, I think, stepping up their game in many ways. EGS, I just did an unboxing of EGS. Did you happen to catch any of those slabs?
I did not get to see that, no.
Oh, nice. If you look on my Instagram, I posted a couple pictures. Would love to hear your thoughts, especially on the Spidey ones. But well, just real quick, because I would love to have actually a roundtable discussion with you and at least a couple of other people that are really into slabs to talk about where we're at in the graded market, even, and what maybe PSA means for smaller companies like EGS, and if that kind of shakes up the game at all.
Yeah. Well, I've wanted to do, I did the review of the PSA slab on my channel, and I actually have an EGS slab, but I'm not sure if it's, if like you said, did they just come out with a new one? Now, if it's new, I'd kind of want to get that because I actually did want to do another. I actually want to get a PGX, a CBCS, and an EGS one, and do another one of those types of videos, but talk about them. But yeah, I'd love to talk about them and give my thoughts. I think it's good to have these companies that do the things that they do. And I've said this about EGS. Like, I think what they do well is label customization. So if you're somebody who likes to do like the color matching stuff like that, that seems to be like a value that they provide. That is not something that you can get from the other the competition.
Yeah, and PGX just switched up the game because they're not, ain't no blue industry standard anymore. Because I don't know if PSA, is gonna change from their red and white MS-DOS 1985 type print label. So, but
yeah, I don't think so.
All right, Swag, man, it's been awesome. Do you have any final words? By the way, I'm sorry I did not provide your link, but guys, if you're not subscribed, or you don't know how to find his channel, shame on you. Go subscribe to Swaggle Haas. But any final words you'd like to share with everyone tonight?
No, just thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. It was hopefully a good, entertaining conversation. Thanks to everyone in the chat for hanging out. And yeah, I don't know. Go Niners. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Good man. Good man. I do want to say one more thing, with all of this stuff, like, gatekeeper on this side, gatekeeper on that side, pitchfork, haters, like, we could squash all that, but we could still sit and say, just be smart. The one thing that I don't want, you can spend your money however you want. You could FOMO out. I just don't want anybody spending a lot of money thinking that it's for this investment that's going to grow their money when it's not. And obviously, any investment is a risk. And as long as you are aware of that risk, then that's different. But that would be my closing statement to everyone. If you're out just looking to get a return on your investment, you got to be smart. You got to put your emotions at the door and just be smart. And it's that simple. Outside of that, buy what you love, blow your money, get one of those money blowers, put those dollar bills out there, get that bag, spend that bag. I don't care, because it just continues making this hobby go and makes it interesting. And like Swag said, I mean, shoot, we're here talking, and there was almost 100 people hanging out all night. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much, Swag. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you. Appreciate all of you guys. We hit 14,000 subscribers today. Thank you guys so much. I can't wait to hit 15,000. I don't want to keep on going. Have a good rest of your Friday, guys, and be safe. Be good to yourselves and each other. Peace.